Okay, so which phrase reminds us of the anecdotal style of the writer? Okay, so that reminds us that certain ways that journalism can be tackled. This is very much an opinion-led article, so it's anecdotal, written from the first-person perspective, but also the personal experiences of this writer. So right away in that opening phrase, that opening noun phrase, in my experience. Okay, so we've got the possessive determiner my, and even just that abstract noun choice itself, experience, in my experience. So this is somebody writing from their personal experience. Now this can add credibility, this can create authenticity, this can create an article where we're invested because we like the person. Now, this is often a device used in modern journalism because people aren't buying newspapers in the same way they used to. So often you buy into the story, you buy into the narrative of somebody you already admire, somebody you're interested in, and therefore read the articles. Danger or a constraint is that often then where we are looking at a very one-sided potentially point of view. That if this is one person's experience, we have to then weigh up their experience against every other experience that might be out there. And we don't know how to make that comparison. We don't know how to compare what's happened to Katie Edwards to 10 other academic professionals. So with anecdotal experiential writing, that is a decision that the reader is left to make. Now, we saw from the previous paragraph that actually the writer pegged into Esther McVeigh, pegged into a real life scenario. So trying to broaden that credibility, that foundation kind of by which we can trust this writer's experience. But sometimes it's a decision the reader gets to make. Sometimes you read an article and you just love the tone. You love the way that the writer presents themselves. They ingratiate themselves to you. You end up enjoying it and therefore reading it and aligning yourself, siding with their opinion. Sometimes somebody's anecdotal and actually they get your back right up. Yeah, and there's something about the way they write that they might come across as arrogant or exclusive or bigoted, and there's something about their anecdotal presentation of themselves that actually alienates you, pushes you away. So whenever we look at anecdotal journalism, it does take or carries that inherent risk. Are the readers going to like me or not? Are the readers going to align themselves with me or not? And that's always an element of risk that a journalist or a writer will take when they go for that kind of anecdotal style. For me, I've been quite honest right from the start. Katie Edwards, it works for me. I like her. I find her quite funny, quite dry. Her sense of humour appeals to me, so I'm on her side. I'm already aligned with her opinion, predisposed to agree with her. But we get to make those decisions ourselves as readers, as we go through. Okay, so which abstract noun does she coin, create to describe a new type of discrimination? Okay, so any type of discrimination, we're looking for an ism, a little clue there. So we've got racism, sexism. So what's the abstract noun she's coining? Brilliant. Did you see it? Accentism. So right there in that opening topic sentence of this paragraph, in my experience, accentism, so discrimination against people based on their accent, is rife. Rife, this lovely adjective choice. Okay, it's being used here in the predicative position. Accentism is rife. That means that it's really rampant, that it runs, that there's an awful lot of it within academic circles, okay, in our elite higher education institutions. Brilliant. Okay, and that also answers the third part of that question. What area of society is prone to this bias? Now, she's used academia in the opening of this article. She's already referred to Russell Howard Group universities. Now here she's using the expanded noun phrase, elite higher education institutions. So really she's renaming the same area of society, that area of academia, that area of university. Okay, now in the final paragraph, it says, what final metaphors introduced? Now I'm just going to hang this metaphor out for us because we are going to come back to it when we look at comparison tomorrow. Okay, but it does say snobbery really needs to be cloaked in a more elegant garment than that old shroud to be convincing. Do you know why I've just paused there? Why I mentioned the other article? If you can see it, brilliant. Both articles are actually using metaphors to do with dress. Aha, Clever, hey? So in this one, it's using the verb phrase to be cloaked. So the idea that that's a form of dress, to cloak yourself, to wear a cloak. And here, in a more elegant garment. So garment here is a noun that links into that lexical field of clothing, of dress. Then that old shroud to be convincing. Now, interestingly, she's using quite an old-fashioned garment here, the concept of a shroud. The shroud was also as well part of like a, sometimes you would be shrouded when you were wrapping up a body for burial. Okay, so it's got this idea of being wrapped up in and being concealed. So actually what it's saying here is that snobbery needs to be cloaked in a more elegant garment than that old shroud. In other words, when we go back into this upper paragraph, okay, snobbery is hiding behind a particular style of dress. Snobbery is dressing itself up in another outfit. So actually people's problem with accents really is that they're snobs and that society can still be guilty of snobbery, okay, of affording privilege and prestige to people based on class. So let's look at that paragraph again before us to try and just unpick that. So in my experience, accentism is rife in our elite higher education institutions, which probably isn't much of a newsflash. So there's that colloquialism, okay, that slang term, that everyday expression, can we see two more? But we do like to kid ourselves that our dislike of regional accents, regional in this context is usually a euphemism for working class, isn't about socioeconomic status at all. So this early colloquialism, when we kid ourselves, okay, it's this idea that we're fooling ourselves. So the first reason she's giving, okay, is that there is a snobbery at work here. Okay, we like to trick ourselves, we like to kid ourselves, we like to pretend that it's not about class when it's all about class. Okay, so reason one explanation for the rude attitudes is it is about class, and we are still a nation who has certain privilege and prestige afforded to certain classes. Okay, but we've got these little elements here. Good gracious, no. So good gracious, a colloquialism. Go and stand that chip from your shoulder, so another colloquialism, but more about consideration for your listener. You see, the international listener simply can't understand English spoken with an accent other than one that's been carefully neutralized. Okay, so this is a second reason. Okay, so there's two reasons here why people change their accents. Now, the one that's presented at the end of that paragraph, okay, so it's quite a complex idea to get our heads around, is we change the way we speak because of our listeners. So actually, I'm a considerate person, I'm a thoughtful person, I'm a kind person if I change the way I speak so that people that aren't English can understand me. So actually, I change the way I speak because I'm considerate, I'm thinking about my listener, versus I change the way I speak because people still are judging me based on my accent. Now, I love this. What a load of old twaddle. So that's another example of that colloquialism. And what's the load of old twaddle? What's the load of old rubbish? The idea that we change our accents to be considerate for our listeners. We change our accents because there's no way an international listener, so in other words, someone from outside of our country, can understand us if we speak with an accent. In other words, if we were conversing in a global academic field, if we spoke with an accent that was regional, in brackets working class, we wouldn't be understood. Therefore, we need to be the considerate person and change the way we speak so that people that aren't British, aren't from this country, can understand me. For me, that's as close as saying, if you're going to live in this country, speak British, innit? That kind of racism, that kind of bigoted attitude towards language. Okay, so complex ideas being introduced there, reminding ourselves that the first one is that social factors that determine a person's use of language, that your class is determining how you use language. Okay, well, my accent's staying put. So what if it tells people where I'm from? I adore where I'm from. The people I love live there and they speak in the same way and I find it beautiful. If you glean from my accent that I come from a socio-economically deprived area, then yes, I do. If you think less of me for where I come from, for how I speak, for choosing not to drop my accent when I'm an academic, then you've got issues. Instead of having to modify or erode my accent to become more acceptable to elite academic institutions, how about elite academic institutions become more acceptable to me? Not to mention the millions of kids who have accents that are perceived to be inappropriate. Don't let accents continue to be one of the last acceptable prejudices. Just shut your face, you tit. Can I say that line again? Just shut your face, you tit. I love it. Makes me laugh. Okay, so she kind of builds this really strong, almost hyperbolic ending. Okay, it's really packed with emotion how she ends. But let's look at the language and how it works to do that. So identify 3 ways in which the writer uses language in the opening sentence of this paragraph. So it's only a short paragraph. So what 3 ways could we label the language? Which words can you group together as offering a positive representation of her attitude towards accent? Which subordinating conjunction is repeated to introduce conditional ideas? Oh, that's an A-grade moment. Which 3 verb phrases beginning with for can you list? How does the end of the article link to the beginning? And which verbs are used to introduce the idea of change and adaptation? So this is actually a really rich closing section. So there's lots around the language that we could investigate. So just pause, answer those questions, and we'll share together in a minute. Okay, lovely people. So we could have said opening sentence, it's a declarative, my accent staying put. So we've got the subject, verb, object, okay, structure. We've also got this lovely little spoken mode feature, well. So this is ending in a conversational tone. Now, the verb is staying put, okay, creates a very definitive, factive tone. Okay, so there is no argument here. This person is keeping their accent. This academic, intelligent, successful, professional woman, heaven forbid, isn't going to change the way she speaks. So this is a really confident closing. Now that reminds us when we're looking at social issues about the extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. This is somebody intrinsically strong, somebody whose internal motivation says you're okay, you're approved of, you don't need other people to approve of you, which is a brilliant attitude. Okay, and she builds that sense of strength in the 3 kind of in the words that she chooses to show a positive representation towards accents, in particular towards her own. So what words could you pick up on that were positive? Brilliant. I adore where I'm from. That verb choice, adore. She loves where she's from. The people I love live there. They speak in the same way and I find it beautiful. So beautiful itself, that adjective choice is a positive representation of her accent. And she does this lovely association between accent and place, and she loves where she's from. She loves her accent. She loves the people there. So these are a positive representation of accent. And that lovely kind of question, so what if it tells people where I'm from? Okay, brilliant. So those are all our positives. Now, which subordinating conjunction is repeated to introduce conditional ideas? So she goes then into this structure of if sentences. If. Now, if itself is an immediate indicator, we're looking at complex sentences, but they're conditional. If you do this, then this will happen. Okay, so these conditional structures. If you glean from my accent that I come from a socioeconomic deprived area, then yes, I do. So she is saying, yes, I do come from a socioeconomically deprived area. She's owning that. That is where I'm from. But then she does this lovely structure next to it. But if you think less of me for where I come from, for how I speak, for choosing not to drop my accent when I'm an academic, then you've got issues. And that conditional structure is really brilliant. It's a very clever device because actually she literally turns the table. And she's saying that it is your problem. You've got issues. You've got the problem if you're going to judge me for how I speak, which is lovely. Also within that sentence, then, she's using those 4 phrases. Okay? If you think less of me for where I come from. So what social factors determine a person's use of language? Where they come from. If you think less of me for how I speak. So our speech can be linked to social factors. If you think less of me for choosing not to drop my accent. So in other words, for not adapting how I speak, then you've got issues. I love it. It's such a strong ending. Okay, so how does the end of the article link to the beginning, and which verbs are used to introduce the idea of change? So she's really strongly advocating for being proud of where you're from and not changing it. And she does it through the verb choices, modify and erode. And then we have that lovely cyclical link, just shut your face, your tit, taking us right back to that heading, shut your face. So she's actually quite aggressive, quite strong and passionate about what she believes. She believes you must not change the way you speak. It's up to other people to change their attitudes if they have an issue with it. So a really strong article, guys. Look forward to working with you tomorrow. Bye.